What you're about to watch is a nightmare. It is not meant to be prophetic. It need not happen. It's the fervent and urgent prayer of all men of good will that it never shall happen. But in this place, in this moment, it does happen.
Hail to the king, baby.
Welcome everyone to Haven of Horror. I am Subject 879 and we've got the great Torgo with us again. We're 6 or 7 episodes into Shudder Shuffle. Unfortunately, from the time that we spun the wheel and created the wheel to now, this is no longer on Shuffle or on Shudder. But we're going to keep it on there because we've been wanting to talk about it. And at the time it was on Shudder, so it counts. And we make the rules, so fuck you.
And we're still able to watch it anyway because it's streaming elsewhere.
Yeah, so we're just going to jump right into it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Torgo, give us a brief plot synopsis for the Texas Chainsaw Part 2.
All right, so this is set a few years after the first movie, and it focuses on Dennis Hopper, who's like a cop trying to track down the like weird cannibal family from the first movie. But this movie has a much more comedic tone than the first one, and I think that's also one of its greatest strengths. And that's very apparent in the first scene because the first kill in this movie is like super goofy and over the top. That's a great scene. But yeah, you also have this radio DJ who comes in there, and she's kind of the final girl of the movie, and she like has an encounter with Leatherface, and then they end up fighting later. It's not a very the plot is like kind of all over the place in certain parts. It's easy to follow though, but it's just kind of like, yeah, things happen.
So, to give a little more detail, this is 13 years after the original. The family is still killing, and the main crux of the plot is this DJ overhears Leatherface and the family killing someone, and goes to a sheriff played by Dennis Hopper, who is the uncle of the wheelchair dude from the first movie, who is on a personal vendetta against the family but can't prove they exist. And Lefty is one of the greatest characters in all of cinema.
He's great. He's so good. I love Dennis Hopper in this movie.
But like you were saying, it is very much more of a comedic movie. And I was thinking of this movie, Evil Dead, where the first movie and the first movie in Evil Dead is more of a serious horror film, or attempting to be, depending on how you want to look at it. And then when they have to come back for the sequel, they're just like, fuck it. It's insane now. The first scene is insane because it's just these two obnoxious kids. And one of them has a gun for some reason. And just starts shooting
random stuff. Yeah.
And he has the stupidest pair of glasses on that I've ever seen.
Yep. Yeah, no. The movie sets the tone pretty well right from the beginning.
Yeah. And not even just with the characters, but like instantly you're hearing like this 80s pop rock thing. It's like, oh, this is completely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're making the movie in a different decade. This definitely has more of an 80s feel. The first one's like kind of more of a lower budget 70s feel.
Now, the first one is my favorite of the proto slashers. Obviously, I prefer the full-on slasher to a proto slasher. That being said, of course, the original was a masterpiece. I think I might like this one more, though. And that might just be the taste thing, because it's more into my sensibilities and my... Mm-hmm. But damn, like, I love everything about this movie. Chop Top is one of the greatest villains, like, ever.
He's got a plate sticking out. His plate was dented.
Dog Will Hunt.
Yeah.
This was Bill Moseley's first movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's also pretty clear from the poster, as you can see, that this movie is more of a comedy than the first one, because that's just a parody of the Breakfast Club poster. And it's got the family on there, which is pretty fitting because they really are the stars of this movie.
yeah.
Like the Dennis Hopper's pretty good, but most of the other characters are really not as interesting.
Yeah, I think Stretch, but I don't know if that's on paper or just that actress.
I think she's likable, but she's kind of really one note when you think about it, or when
It's
based
insane.
on what the movie is.
I
What?
was looking into the cast while watching this. You know what else the actress that plays Stretch has been in that we've both seen?
Oh, what?
Leprechaun 3.
Oh shit! Really?
She is the like model that's like obsessed with her body until it starts to swell and then explodes.
Oh wow. Yeah. Oh my god. I didn't realize that was her.
Yep. same
Wow.
same actress, and I didn't realize it either. But no, I think she's a great, and I think she's undeniably the final girl. Um,
Hmm.
just from based on the the rules of the trope as well as that final shot. At the end of the day, she's the only one left, and you can tell
Yeah.
this was meant to end the franchise, but it didn't.
But it didn't. Yeah.
And look,
Yeah.
the remake is good. I like the remake quite a bit, but I wouldn't have been sad if it had ended here, unless Toby Hooper wanted to come back and do a third one. But the way this ends, I don't think you needed a three, even if I do want to see
Yeah.
four.
I mean, the only other one that I've seen is that awful reboot that came out this year. And as far as I'm concerned, Texas Chainsaw is just the first one and this one.
I think you would like the remake. You should watch that at some point.
Yeah, maybe if we review it, I'll watch it.
I'd be down to do that. But yeah, left, and then I think for the good side though, as much as I do like the DJ, Lefty is what steals the show, and that's all Dennis Hopper.
Mhm.
Um, he's great.
Yeah, I like that he's not above doing a movie like this because he's a great actor, elsewhere, but he's still he recognizes what this is and he like hams it up perfectly.
Yeah. And I thought it was a cool idea to make him related to the most irritating character in the original movie.
Yeah.
Because I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but that dude in the wheelchair is so fucking annoying.
Yeah, well, I do think I don't know. I can see liking this one more than the first one, but I think the first one is still probably the better movie. I
The
think
first
they're
one has less holes in its logic. I
hmm
was noticing that while I was watching this because, for example, there's that scene where Lefty has them put out a reward for any kind of information, and then the first person that comes to him with information, he can't wait to kick out.
yeah.
But at the same time, with how absurd this movie is, it's like, does it really matter?
Yeah, there is the question of does it really matter or just have fun watching it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, what's my notes on this movie?
Oh no.
Yeah. We're prepared, I promise. And the nice thing about this is also, I hate to use this term, but peak 80s horror, where it's over the top, but it's also very to the point. Nothing feels like we're wasting time. Nothing feels unearned. Um,
Hmm.
and it does the thing that Evil Dead 2 does, where it manages to balance the comedy, I think, with the horror. That first scene with Bill Moseley, where he's got her cornered in the radio room, is both funny and disturbing. Because you're
Yeah.
like, if this guy like broke into my house, I'd be terrified.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, all of the family characters are really funny. Like the old man is hilarious because he just won't shut up. He's just rambling the whole
We
time.
gotta get meat.
And then they bring out the grandpa who's just like a corpse in a chair, and they want to have him try to kill the final girl, and he keeps dropping the hammer.
Well, you notice, and I know I may have noticed this on my first watch through, but this is only the second time I've seen it. They do just kind of recreate the whole dinner scene.
Yeah, no, that's as soon as she woke up tied to the chair, that's the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, we're doing the dinner scene again. And
Doing it again.
it is kind of that sequel thing of we're gonna do something from the first movie that you recognize, but it's different enough and it still fits the tone of this movie because it is a more it's just as chaotic as that original scene, but it's more like comedic in a way.
Well, and I think that's why it works because in a lot of sequels, they don't change the tone. It's just so like, for example, take a if this was a serious film and it was a
Hmm.
sequel, we would do that dinner scene again beat for beat, and there'd be no difference. But
Hmm.
because they changed the tone, you could redo that scene, but it's also completely different because the entire tone is different.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. This is just a really good example of a well done sequel that feels familiar and different at the same
Like
time.
Ghostbusters 2.
Oh, but that's couldn't,
So
yeah.
I have to ask you, because I know
Uh-huh.
you said you liked this movie quite a bit. Was Leatherface too different for you?
Um, no, he seemed pretty consistent with the first movie.
Okay. So same, but just colored through a different lens.
Yeah, it's much more of the goofy version of the character.
So okay, so the next thing I have to ask about is the weird thing with him and sex in this movie. Did you picked up on
Yeah.
that, right? Because it's not subtle.
Well, no, of course, yeah, it's not subtle at all. Yeah. Yeah, you have that scene where he's like rubbing the chainsaw on her leg, and it's like, eh, yeah, I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, but the imagery is not subtle at all.
Well, so it's clearly like this guy is not all there,
Hmm.
and it kind of reads to me like someone on with someone experiencing their first kind of romantic feelings or sexual feelings, but he's
Hmm.
also a psychopath that wields a chainsaw.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't have the mental capacity to understand what he's feeling, and he is just like a crazy maniac with a chainsaw. Um,
Kind of pay that off later. She's trapped down in that hellhole that they're living in, and he like puts the mask on her. And at first it's like, oh, he's
yeah,
gonna help her escape, but then he just ties her up and leaves.
yeah. Well, he like tries to dance with her a little bit. It's That's a pretty uncomfortable scene too. It's like this movie, like you said, it does a good job of balancing. It's not all comedy.
And I think what's smart about this movie versus other sequels that attempt a tonal shift. I couldn't think of the word there. Is it also keeps kind of the same themes and ideas of that original movie. Um, this is still very much kind of a critique of the meat. Um, what do you want to call it?
Yeah,
Meat
meat industry.
industry. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean, uh, the main head of the family, is like he wins that award for best chili, and it's like, oh my God, do you know what's in that stuff?
no, no, they don't.
Yeah, they don't at
And
all.
he just like all he cares about is the business. We got a lot of football players to feed. We got um,
Hmm.
and it's and maybe a little with that a little bit of kind of corporate parody. Like he doesn't care. He only sees
Yeah.
human as cattle to make money.
Hmm. Yeah, and that very much carries over from the first one, where you have like the imagery of like farm animals and stuff being killed.
How did you feel about the effects and the ramp up of gore in this?
Um, I thought it was really entertaining. Like this movie is pretty gory. I want to say because the first movie, a lot of people think it's gory, but it's not really that gory.
This
It's
is
just
what
more
they
like
think that movie is.
yeah, it's more the implication. This movie, it's like it's less uncomfortable, but in a way, it actually is more gory, I think.
Well, and you can get away with, I think, it's that trade off, right? We're not as intense. We're more goofy, so we can show buckets of blood and guts and
Yeah, because we're making a cartoony movie.
yeah. But I will say, going back to the sexuality thing, I do appreciate that they attempt to flesh him out a little bit more in this farce.
Yeah.
Maybe farce isn't the right word, but
No,
you know.
this is a farce. It's a well done farce.
Yeah,
Um,
it is.
because as far as character depth and development and stuff like that, there's not a whole lot going on in this movie. Um, Dennis Hopper plays this character really well, but his character and his arc is very basic. Like there's not a lot going on there.
Well, and it's funny because in a way, yeah, it is, but at the same time, everybody gets what they want, at least of the protagonists.
Yeah, true.
He takes them down and she survives. Although I have to ask you, maybe the one thing I was confused about in the movie that I don't know if I can ignore, why did she do the chainsaw dance at the end?
I think she just snapped at the end, like like the final girl in the first movie.
Because arguably she goes through just as much, if not more.
Yeah, well, I think it's a similar ending of the first movie, whereas except for Leatherface doing the dance at the end, it's the victim doing the dance, but still, she still snaps just like at in the first
I
one.
I almost do kind of wish Hooper had done a third. Because
Yeah,
I think for any sequels to the original, you need more movies like this. Because like I've heard that the third one is back to basics, like a straight horror film, and I do kind of want to see it because it's got Viggo Mortensen in it.
oh cool.
Um, but I think once you go to this place, like you can't go back, right? Like,
I would just run with it.
yeah,
Yeah,
just run with it. Make absurd films,
yeah. I
even if they're
mean,
not
like
great.
look at Evil Dead. The very next movie was also completely different, but carried on the comedic tone.
Well, and there was no chance of that ever going back. Like once you do the chainsaw hand, which is another thing that this movie has in common with Evil Dead, is
It's chainsaws.
chainsaws.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
came out a year before Evil Dead 2. Isn't that crazy?
Oh yeah, this was '86.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So this did the whole comedic horror thing before that movie, which is that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Um and it's interesting because I think these are the prime examples of 80s horror comedy, but it's two different styles of comedy.
Yeah.
This is more satire and but just dropping that like serious edge
Hmm.
and going more into black comedy, whereas Evil Dead 2 is, more goofy,
More slapstick.
fantastical slapstick.
Yep.
And I wish we
Yep.
still made movies like that, man.
Yeah. No. Like for some reason, a lot of people don't think slapstick is that funny anymore.
Because of the way comedy is currently.
Right. Right.
It's all lowbrow slapstick.
Hmm.
Um,
Everybody has different tastes now. But yeah. I wasn't sure if they continued with the comedic tone after that. I don't think they do, from what I heard about the sequels. But
4 might, because that movie just seems like a insane fever dream.
well, and I don't know how much of that is intentional comedy, from
Yeah,
what I know about four.
I haven't seen 4 yet. I want to though, because all I know about that movie is they're involved with the Illuminati and they don't eat like human meat; they just eat pizza.
Oh, really?
Oh, and
I,
Leatherface
I
dresses in drag for the whole movie.
I just know that Matthew McConaughey's in it and the Leatherface drag thing.
And Renee Zellweger.
And Renee Zellweger, yeah. It's weird. We'll review that movie one day.
Yeah, I really do want to see it.
Um, but yeah, no, I as far as Texas Chainsaw 2, I love Dennis Hopper in this movie. I love the comedic tone and the satire. It is very much just a good example of how to do a first movie where um it's very familiar, but it's doing a new thing at the same time.
Uh, I think the last thing that I really wanted to bring up was the DJ's like tech guy or whoever.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that guy.
that's another pinnacle of like this is funny, but when you think about it, it's horrifying. Because he's just
Yeah.
walking around with no face and like half his chest is missing.
He can barely move. Like he has to move his arms like this.
He's like trying to cut the ropes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that they have some pretty screwed up ideas in this movie, but they make it funny at the same time.
Yeah. It it does make me kind of sad that New Line got the light rights for and just made a generic
Yeah.
slasher.
Yeah, that's kind of reminds me of the Alien franchise where it starts off as a horror thing, then goes to a different direction the second movie. And then for the third one, they want to bring it back to basics and do straight up horror.
Although I would argue with Alien that could work more because going from action to horror is not necessarily a hard job.
Right.
I think going from a horror comedy to a pure horror would be the harder job because like in the first movie, Leatherface was scary.
Hmm.
The family was scary. In this, they're all just a bunch of goofballs. You
They're all the
can't.
stars of the movie.
All the stars are here.
All the stars.
Even Grandpa gets, he's creepy but kind of funny just because. But that
Yeah.
was how it was in the first movie too. I would say if there's any comedy in that first movie, it's him trying to hit her with the hammer, and that carries
Yeah.
over, I think, to this one.
Yeah, that happens in this one too.
Well, Torgo, as much as I love this movie, I don't have a whole lot else to say that I'm thinking of at the moment. Granted,
Mhm.
probably all come to me once we finish recording.
Okay.
Did you have
Okay,
any
so that.
final thoughts?
No, I really, really loved this movie.
Great.
It's it's definitely I think one of the best things we've watched so far in this series.
I would say this is the best thing we've watched so far on this Shudder Shuffle.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Caligari is pretty good too.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, Torgo, I'm gonna give this. I'm just gonna go all in, man. I'm giving this a 5.
Oh
I think
wow.
this is a perfect film.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think I'm gonna stick to a 4 for now, but I could see myself going up uh, if I watch it more.
Oh man, I was from the way you were talking, I was thinking this was gonna be added to the 5 out of 5 list, but that
Uh,
that is fair. That
Damn.
is fair. Yeah, I think both 1 and 2 are masterpieces. Um, but if you were just to say, "Hey, let's watch a Texas Chainsaw movie," I would probably pick this one.
Completely fair, yeah.
Also, this movie is what teaches the Chucky in the Child's Play reboot to kill people.
Oh yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we still haven't watched the remake. Or you still haven't watched the remake.
Yeah, no, I still have to see the show too.
Yeah. Well, Torgo, I think that we're gonna call it there. Um, definitely not a bad review. I think. With simpler movies like this, this 20-minute video is pretty much the average.
Yep. Yeah, it's enough to cover everything, I think.
Yeah, because it's one of those movies where like it's a very simple plot, but when you're watching it, it doesn't feel as simple because you're, in the moment.
You're in it. Yeah, exactly. But no,
So,
I mean, I definitely recommend it.
me too. All right, you ready to find out what we're watching next week? Beyond. Okay, I can live with that.
Beyond.
Yeah, good movie from what I remember.
I don't think I've heard of that.
It's from the director of Reanimator. It's the only other movie that it's his other like Lovecraftian
Okay.
adaptation. Well, Torgo, that is going to be it for us tonight. As always, thanks for hanging out, and I will see you guys.
Yeah.
I will see you next Friday.
See
Or
you
next
Friday.
time we record. See ya.